Let's do just a quick recap from last week and make sure that we still remember how to do these skills that we've talked about. Let's do just what I like to call a little bit of spiraling. We always want to go back and review things we've done before. When I multiply decimal by a power of 10, remember I count the number of zeros in the power of 10, and I'm going to move my decimal. Because I'm multiplying, I'm making the number bigger. I'm going to move my decimal that many places to the right. So I know that 678 thousandths times 10 is 6 and 78 hundredths. When you look at these two problems, the main thing you need to remember is to leave off the decimal until you have worked the problem. You should be really good at 2-digit by 2-digit multiplication by now. You should be able to look at this problem and know that when you come up with your product, there will be one number after the decimal in the answer because there's only one number after the decimal in the problem. Same thing over here, you're going to know that when you get your product, there will be two numbers after the decimal because there are two numbers after the decimal in the problem. Dividing by powers of 10, there are two zeros and 100, which means this is going to go back two places. Have a wave that I need to put something in, which is always going to be a 0. So that answer would be 874 10,000ths. And then this problem is one that you should know when you look at it, that it has to go into what we sometimes call a division house. It has to be there. It's not a power of 10. We can't just go across and count zeros. The big thing to remember here is we bring that decimal up and then we forget about it. So that's just a recap over the things that we have done up until now. Today is actually our last lesson in our decimal multiplication and division topic, and it's how do I divide a decimal by a decimal. You're going to see that it's going to be a little bit different. When we divided a decimal by a whole number, do you remember what the main thing was that we needed to remember? Here it is. The main thing to remember is before you even start working the problem, you're going to put a decimal point. Bring that decimal point up. Well, we like to say bring that baby up. So dividing a decimal by a decimal requires one more step that we have to do when we divide a decimal by a whole number. So you've got one more step that we have to add in. So we're going to practice just by me showing you some problems. This first problem is 4.2 divided by 0.7. Remember, we can just pretend like this 0 isn't here. This is just telling us that there's nothing in the ones place. So when we set this problem up, we're going to set it up. It's 4.2 divided by 0.7. So I'm going to do my 0.7 into 4.2. And when you look at that, that problem reads 4.2 divided by 0.7. Now, our goal when we divide is to get a whole number as a divisor. The way to get the whole number as the way to get the divisor a whole number is to move the decimal. Remember, a decimal has a whole number after it. So we're moving the decimal over to make that a whole number. Here's the kicker though. What you do in the divisor, you have to do in the dividend. So it's only fair. So now I've moved one place in the divisor, so I'm going to move one place in the dividend. Think about what you've done. You've done times 10. Each time you're going up 10 times. What I like to do at this point is rewrite the problem so that you can see what it really looks like. When you notice, if you'll notice, we had a decimal here and here, but these are whole numbers now, so we don't really have to put a decimal. We know that 7 goes into 42 6 times. So if you go back and look at the original problem, 4.2 divided by 0.7, your answer is going to be 6. Okay? This is basically you're moving your decimals. Just moving your decimals in order to get whole numbers. Okay? Let's try another one. 4 and 52 hundredths divided by 2 tenths. So I'm going to go ahead and we're dividing by 2 tenths. 4 and 52 hundredths. Now notice as I'm doing this, we are not bringing anything up. We cannot do that because we have to have a whole number in our divisor spot. I'm going to have to move one place value in my divisor to get a whole number, which means I need to bring one place value in my dividend. Okay, now let's rewrite the problem. The problem now is 2 into 45.2. Now look at what we have. We now have a decimal divided by a whole number, and we know when we have that the first thing we do is we bring that baby up. Okay? So now you're ready to forget the decimal. It's gone. We've already taken care of it. It's not really gone, but we've done what we need to do with it. Now you divide as usual. 2 goes into 4 2 times. 2 times 2 is 4. Subtract, bring down. 2 goes into 5 2 times. 2 times 2 is 4. Subtract, bring down. Remember, we're ignoring that. We've already taken care of it. 2 goes into 12 6 times. 6 times 2 is 12. And we have zeroed out. So 4 and 52/100ths divided by 2/10 is 22 and 6/10. Okay? Let's try a couple other practice problems. One thing before we do a couple more problems, remember, as you're moving that decimal over in the divisor and in the dividend, all you're doing is multiplying them by the same power of 10. Your whole goal in this is to change the divisor to a whole number. And then you have your new problem here. Okay? All right, let's practice with this one. 43.2 divided by 0.6. So we've got 0.6 into 43.2. Okay? This has to be a whole number. So my first job is to make it a whole number. I moved it one place in the divisor. That means I have to move it one place in the dividend. Let's rewrite the problem now so we don't get our decimals confused. Now the problem becomes 432 divided by 6. So we just have whole number division here. 6 does not go into 4, but 6 goes into 43 7 times. 7 times 6 is 42. Subtract, bring down. 6 goes into 12 2 times. 2 times 6 is 12. And you've zeroed out. So 43 and 2/10 divided by 6/10 is 72. Okay? So try this one. 1 and 61/100ths divided by 7/10. Okay? Remember your goal. We're making the number in the divisor a whole number. What you do in the divisor, you do in the dividend. Rewrite your problem. 7 into 16.1. Now, we're back to a decimal divided by a whole number. Bring that baby up. And now forget about it. 7 goes into 16 2 times. 2 times 7 is 14. Subtract, bring down. 7 goes into 21 3 times. 3 times 7 is 21. And you've zeroed out. We now know that 1 and 61/100ths divided by 7/10 is 2 and 3/10. Okay, let's try one more. 7 and 2/100ths divided by 3 and 9/10. So we've got 3 and 9/10 going into 7 and 2/100ths. Okay, first step, make my divisor a whole number. Second step, do the same thing in the dividend. Third step, rewrite the new problem. 39 into 70.2. Notice we have a decimal divided by a whole number. Bring that baby up and be done with it. 39 goes into 70 one time. 1 times 39 is 39. Let's subtract. Whoops, that should be a 6. 10 minus 9 is 1. Okay, bring down. 39 into 312. I'm going to use my cover method. 39 is almost 40. So I'm going to say 40 into 31 would go about 7 times. 7 times 9 is 63. 7 times 3 is 21 plus 6 is 27. Let's subtract 10. That would be a 12 minus 3 is 9. 10 minus 7 is 3. Look what has happened. Now, I did this on purpose to show you that if your remainder is ever the same as your divisor, you know that this number right here should have bumped up 1. So let me rewrite it. Let's go back through the steps. 39 into 70.2. Bring that baby up. 39 goes into 70 once. Subtract. It becomes a 6. 10 minus 9 is 1. 6 minus 3 is 3. Bring down your 2. Now, this is going to be an 8 instead of a 7. 8 times 9 is 72. 8 times 3 is 24 plus 7 is 31. Okay, and you zeroed out. So anytime these equal, you know that this part of your quotient should have gone up. There's room for it to go up one more place. Okay, so now we know that 7 2/100 divided by 3 9/10 equals 1 8/10. All right, so on your notes page tonight, here's what I'd like you to do. Part 1, explain to me how dividing a decimal by a decimal is different from dividing a decimal by a whole number. Think about what we did. Go back and look if you need to through the lesson and listen. But explain to me how you're going to know if there's a decimal in the divisor and in the dividend, what you have to do first versus just a decimal in the dividend. Okay, when you're dividing a decimal by a whole number, there's just a decimal in the dividend. On part 2 and part 3, I would just like you to copy these problems down and show me a little bit of practice. I want to see you work these problems out. Obviously, both of those problems are going to need to be put in a division house, like we like to call it. But come to class tomorrow with these 3 parts filled in on your notes page, and we will be practicing lots of decimal by decimal division tomorrow. Have a good rest of the evening.